thinking about this. Yes?
I'd like to hear from the speakers what your process is for collecting and analyzing your measurements, your analytics, what you look
Okay,
at, what the
analytics.
process is.
Good. What else? I'm liking that because I know people who do analytics. This is good.
What about advice on article size?
Article size, good. And one thing we have is opinions. Oh yeah. Gary?
Discipline in publishing, getting it out.
If you read my post today, it's all about that. That's a good one, thank you. Sir?
In recruiting bloggers, what is the definition of a good blogger? Or what would you consider?
Remember the story, Little Johnny in the 3rd grade? The teacher said, Johnny, where are elephants found? He says, how do you lose an elephant?
But there are a lot of people who call themselves bloggers, but what are the benchmarks? I understand.
I'm loving it. Where are bloggers found and who are they? Ma'am?
What are the best practices and worst practices that you've seen that we've learned?
Okay, I'll handle worst practices. Ma'am?
Getting lots and lots of comments.
How do you get a lot of comments?
Oh, that's easy.
That's
Not in a good way. But
Not good comments.
And I didn't mean it about your mother when I said it. You know that kind of thing?
How about promoting your blog with like other bloggers and how do you get, you know?
Can we just stop at your first 3 words?
Promoting your
Promoting your blog. I love it. And by the way, when we get into something like this, I don't want it just to come from the fore and front.
Right.
I mean, we can do some really good stuff with this. That's
Very
great.
good.
How you get other people within your organization to contribute.
Yeah.
Enrollment. To get others to paint the fence. Okay? Yeah?
Do you have advice on which blogs to use, which blogging, WordPress.com?
Platforms.
Blogging platform. I've used a lot of
And what we have, again, is opinions. All right? And they all stink.
Crisis prevention and damage control.
Crisis prevention and damage control. Don't post.
First, stop digging. Second, apologize.
Yeah, it's like being married. Apologize first.
Even if you were right.
Tips for using graphics or pictures.
Absolutely. John?
Managing voice when you have multiple bloggers on doing the same blog.
Multiple bloggers
Same blog.
and letting go.
Yeah.
Having done that, they got to be like this. I said, oh, that's great. Just post the darn thing. And the funny thing I find is it catches different readers. When we have a different voice blog, we get a whole bunch of different comments. It's crazy.
Titling of blogs, so do you need to be controversial versus you need to be just factual? This is about 10 best things versus you make up.
Okay, let's sharpen that because you got about 3 really good things there. 1, what's he talking about? Tightening.
I thought you said titling.
Titling.
Putting a title on the blog.
Let's use that one. The next thing he was saying was, I got controversy.
Oh, yeah, well, okay.
All right?
Should you be controversial? Yes.
Lighting the fuse. And there was a third part he was making. Remember? I'm sorry to do that to you.
I thought it was about being useful, or how do you bring value to it?
No, it was in the controversy thing.
Yeah.
Is it being factual or is it with the titling?
Or is it making things up?
Well, yes, I think.
Factual or opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so is it?
Fact and opinion.
Yeah, okay.
And by the way, what I see here is, I looked in the rule book before I came, none of these were in it, so this is going to be a lot of fun. Anybody else? Because we're almost at the bottom.
Blogging for mobile sites, is it different?
Right? There's also IPv6, right? And so I'm a member of Shiva's group, Google Technical User Group. I just let those guys handle it, but nevertheless, it does have to be handled, and we can talk about the various ways to get it done. Sir?
I actually feel like I'm in the wrong class right now. But,
Okay.
how do I get my company or organization to blog?
That's a good one.
No, it's really true, and just let me give you, last night, I had never met Dana before. For the last 3 years, he's helped me build and sell a company and all this other stuff. So I finally met him, you know, nice to see you, sir. And as we walked back, my wife, who runs a law factory, she said, well, is your show tomorrow going to be about convincing the major players they want to blog? I said, no, those guys shouldn't come. But it's a major problem of not just how can you get them to want to do it, but how can you get them to hold it in the right light. Okay, I just wrote a post about, I was doing a law firm 4 years ago, and one of the partners said, no, it's illegal to blog, because he couldn't get us to stop any other way. Okay, so it's something we got to run through. So how about how to build a groundswell? All right? Because even if you're not in a corporate area, even if you've got donors, you still want to build a groundswell. A place that I blog is 40 plus. How many people here blog on 40 plus in DC? Jack? Well, you're with me, so yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, one of the things we're constantly trying to do, because they have a revolving crew of people in there, is trying to say, it's okay, you can do this. And then they move on to something else like Tumblr. Somebody else?
One more?
Yes?
If you think I work for a nonprofit, so our blog audience is what some of the most committed followers of our organization.
Right.
Where do we move them from the blog? What level of engagement do we take them to from the blog?
I love it. All right, so blogging plus. I think we have enough to keep us till cocktails. Yes.
So, coming from the commercial side of things, our blog is a marketing tool. So, how do you get your message in without being too gratuitous?
Being too gratuitous. Well, one of the most important things you said there was message.
How do you get a marketing message in without being too obvious?
Well, A, being too obvious, and 2, being so non-obvious it doesn't make it. All right? So message with scattered posts.
Marketing things.
No such thing. You can be subtold, but it's there. All right? By the way, my wife, who you'll hear a lot about today, there's that television ad where the guy's snoring and she reaches over with the fry pan and hits him on the head. She thinks that's one of the most effective ads she's ever seen. Every time she sees it, she starts to laugh, and it gets me nervous. But so one person's subtlety is lost completely on somebody else. You know? Anything else? Because this is worth coming to. I'm glad I came. All right.
Well, let's answer something.
Now let's answer some of them. How do we want to do this? Do we want to take them in order, or do you guys see some grouping that you want to do? And help. I'm not talking to the guys at the table. You see some. We got A's, B's, and C's.
Well, why don't we start with discipline? I mean, as a starting point,
All right.
let's say, how do you establish discipline within an organization where this is something that hasn't been done before? People aren't sure what the rules are.
So A.
You know.
Do we got any other A topics?
How do you
Coffee
get your
helps.
companies?
Yeah, that could go with it. Right.
Where's that? Groundswell.
Groundswell, yeah.
All right. Let's get some other A's. Let's get 3 more A's.
Maybe best
I like
practices.
that marketing message.
Okay. A. And
Best practices,
best practices. A.
and where do you find bloggers?
Right. Where are bloggers found? Where is that? Too close. Oh, right there.
Or also titling, you know.
Yeah, Tyler's a good one. So if we can guarantee we're going to hit those next, 6 or 7, I think that's a good one. Randy, why don't you pick which one you want to start on?
Okay, I'll start with, well, discipline and titling, and maybe talk a little bit about groundswell too, based on what I know. I think one thing that I've seen, and I also do work with the Union of Concerned Scientists, and they just started, they just had several sessions to convince their scientists to start blogging. And, you know, they're all walking around scratching their heads, saying, what does that mean? How often should we do? What's the voice, you know? I think the thing to make clear, though, is that this is not just some, I think someone used the sentence before, we have a blog. And that's kind of a dangerous mindset, because it sounds like we have a Facebook account, we have a Twitter account. No, a blog is a way of reaching your organization out into the audience. You all know that. But I think the important thing is to say it's not just a hobby. It's really part of has to be a disciplined process within the organization. So at the very front end, you have to define what's our mission with this, who are we trying to reach with this, what are the subjects that we'd want to cover. And I think a big mistake is, say at the Union of Concerned Scientists, there's the assumption that, oh, well, you know the subject, you know what to write about. Well, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, it's helpful to say, identify at the front end, here are 10 things you could write about. Here are 10 subjects, and that could balloon into 20, it could be more than that. But don't assume that someone who's never written before and hasn't been in the business of coming up with ideas will just go home and be, this font of great ideas. You kind of have to, and then at the same time, you have to say, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to publish this on this schedule, and it has to be rigid. It's not a hobby. It's part of the organization. It has to be taken seriously. And I think, with a lot of organizations, it's just kind of like, yeah, we got our blog going. And it's just kind of running off in the closet somewhere. It's not really integrated into the communications operation or to establishing the voice of the organization. I think that's really important to get that across, that this is a key part of how we're reaching out, and we have to take it as a serious business function. The titling part of it, I'll just throw out my little story from that. Coming from a magazine background, you're always thinking about clever headlines. That's what you do. Do clever headlines. Oh, show how clever I am by doing this headline. Well, on the web, because of SEO, you can't do punch, you can't do any of that stuff. You have to use the words in kind of a way that's painful if you consider yourself clever. Painfully obvious. And so with this innovation blog, I threw out several ideas, and of course, half a dozen of them were already being used by someone. So I said, okay, let's be ironic. Let's call it the Department of Innovation. It's absurd on the face of it. Well, and the main reason I did that is we had to get innovation in the title for search purposes. So innovation was in the title, Department of Innovation. Well, there have been a number of comments now saying, how could you have a Department of Innovation? How could a bureaucratic department be about innovation? And I finally had to say, it's not meant to be literal. And that's a case where, I'm kind of going around in a circle on this, but the point is, for SEO purposes, you want to be very forthright, very direct, and don't assume that people will get what you're saying. But I think the important thing is don't try to be too cute, more than anything. That's one of the other things. In the groundswell, I think, just from the standpoint of getting an organization behind this idea, I know a lot of people at a senior level would say, I don't do Twitter, I don't do Facebook, that's beneath me. I'm not going to do this stuff. But blogging, I have a lot to say. And I think you kind of have to tap into that ego to say, this is not about blogging. This is about you sharing your wisdom. This is with you sharing your intelligence and you engaging all the people we see as customers, clients, whomever out there in a meaningful way. And so you appeal to their ego to say this is the way to do it. And then you also say, do you want to be left behind? Everyone else is reaching out in some way. And so, you get away, you reduce their fears about certain things. You can say, look, we can moderate comments, we can do these things so you're not under personal attack. We can have people from the marketing department read over it so you sound semi-intelligent. We can do all these things just to engage you. And we don't want to put a heavy load on you, so you do it once a week and we'll have other people do it too. And every time you get a positive response, no matter how small it is, you go and tell that person, say, look what happened. Look at these comments. It may only be 3 comments, but that's like gold. People, oh wow, people are responding to this. When you deal with social media particularly, as everyone here knows, it's very hard to get real impressive measurements or metrics. Everyone's scrambling with what the hell is a good metric at ROI. Part of it is it's anecdotal information. And I tell people in organizations, as soon as you get anything good, any good comment, anything good, make sure you kick it upstairs. They may not understand the metrics, they may not understand any of this stuff, but they understand a compliment. And so I think part of it is just you keep feeding that and you reduce their fears as much as possible. Now, I don't know if that answers your question, Bill.
It's a good first one.
Yeah.
Let's let Carol take the.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I went on for a while there. So.
That's okay.
I was gonna take discipline.